everyone, and welcome to the sauna that is the greenhouse. Dear God, this is probably the hottest stage that I've ever spoken on. So it didn't actually have a blurb in my app description for the talk, so I could probably go off-piste. Hell, I could even talk about Love Island. If anyone wants to do that later, I'm available at the bar. But I'm actually here to talk about our recent research, What Unites the Kingdom. Don't worry, I'm not going to be a research bore. It's 4 o'clock, it's so hot, and to be honest, that isn't the vibe of MadFest as a whole. And to be honest, it's not really my vibe either. Instead, I'm going to give you a bit of a romp through some of our findings so you can understand how to engage and resonate more with mass mainstream audiences. So why did we go about doing this research in the first place? And there are 2 reasons. Number one is that ITV is a cohesive storytelling vehicle. So we reach about 38 million people every week up and down the country. And then secondly, obviously, that makes us a mass mainstream, mass reach media. So we're in a really weird cultural landscape right now, right? So it's post-pandemic, post-Brexit. Is there anybody left in the cabinet? They're dropping like flies. Hell, we might even be pre-apocalypse. Who knows? It's all to play for. But our point of view on the world is quite different to some of the people that you probably heard about at MadFest today. So they're going to be talking about emergent trends, right? They're going to be talking about emergent technology, new early adopters, fast-moving culture, emergent trends. And all of that is really sexy stuff. But I err and argue for the case of understanding slower moving culture, because that is where your brands will make a difference, and that is where you will engage mass millions of people. So I'll tell you a little bit about how we do that at ITV. So this is a delightful, very high-spec upside-down triangle. There's no copyright attached to this. Please feel free to take a picture, use as you will. So we use semiotics and macro trends. What the hell is semiotics? Well, it's basically unpacking meaning and understanding how signs and language and symbols give off a meaning to somebody. So that might be really useful for point of sale, but for us it's really interesting in terms of content development and creative development. And so we look at this because it tends to last for 5 to 10 years, but we're always thinking about the micro trends that sit under it. And they bubble up and they often will cause a cultural shift. And it might change and evolve the way that something is communicated. It might change people's attitudes, their tastes, and their behaviors. We also get a sense of those big cultural moments. So understanding why Love Island is such a cultural phenomena, or why the World Cup is going to mean so much to people. If you are here today, I'm sure you've heard loads about cultural phenomena and those kind of like viral things that like blow up on TikTok. But if you're concentrating your whole marketing strategy on just being present in those moments, you're never ever going to be able to keep up with it, because things can move on at such a fast pace, it can be really confusing to people. So I always say, get a sense of those truths, stress test a trend, and think about what it actually says about deep underlying human behavior. Think about the why and not just the what. So I am a big fan of this book. If you haven't read it, I really, really recommend that you get it. It's Kate Fox, Watching the English. And she spoke a lot about all the kind of idiosyncrasies of people at large. And I was like, okay, this is the ambition for the research. Let's do Watching the British, and let's see what we can find that unites us. What is our shared cultural DNA? So it's a properly big piece of work. I'm not going to bore you with all the detail of it, but we went across the 4 nations and to 32 towns and cities. Now, give me a hand up if you've been or to any of these, or if any of these are your hometown. All right, we've got Stockport, Rochdale, Bradford, Bingley, Tamworth, Buckham, Bonnybridge, Merthyr Tydfil, and Ballyclare. All right, so we are in a media bubble, my friends. That is proof right there. That many of us don't walk the walk and sometimes talk the talk of the people that we're trying to communicate to. So that's why we spoke to 45 villages with the qualitative part of it and 2,053 people through the survey. And we've got some really interesting stuff. So I'll show you the headlines of the research as a whole. So you've got to lean into self-deprecating humility. Often, brands will get caught down a peg or two because they can appear to be really lofty. They can appear to be quite patronizing. They can appear to be very top-down. Channel the plucky underdog narrative, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that and what's in conflict with it at the moment. Focus on our softly socialist DNA. Britain's really, really worried about how angry society appears to be getting, and they really want to extol the virtue of the power of kindness. And dial-up will be present, much like Rian was just talking about in her previous session, in joyful, slapstick, silly humour. My God, is it a tonic, and my God, do we all need it? And hell, if you can't do that, then at least have a wry, knowing, self-aware smile. Communicate wilder landscapes and tall tales and unpolished characters, and believe that change is possible. And these are the 5 codes of our shared cultural DNA that we found. So we've got proud resilience, social graces, dreaming big, knowing your roots, and everyday magic. And as you can see there, they're all really, really robust. They're all really statistically significant. But they don't add up to 100, just in case you've had too many Camparis and you're wondering why. That's because it's not a segmentation. So it's not a State of the Nation bit of commentary. They're just big mass storytelling vehicles. They're creative territories to resonate with mass mainstream Britain. So let me give you a little bit of a talk through the first one, which is proud resilience. So when we spoke to people, it's pretty clear. It's been a few years. It's not been the best, and we're ever leaning into doom scrolling and seeing that the world is rapidly becoming a bit of a place of doom and gloom. But Brits define themselves by our shared grit and our gall, our ability to keep our chins up and our spirits high. It's that kind of like Dunkirk spirit, which has still got a bit of a hangover. It's embedded in our British psyche. And that's why we saw loads of tattoos with words like perseverance. You might be walking around here and seeing tattoos of astrology symbols and amazing kind of Swedish mantras. But when we looked around Britain, there's lots of different bulldogs and signs of courage and take heed and keep moving on. Or like Kim here, one step at a time. And that's because for a lot of people, life is an obstacle. It's an endurance test, and lots of different hurdles come people's way. But 85% of Brits said us that they really admire and they're really inspired by people who share their life lessons and their lived experiences of adversity, and who move on from it and come out facing forward. This code is why such mantras like "Get Brexit Done" really resonated with Brits, because it's about rolling up your sleeves and getting the job done. And I know that that will make lots of people uncomfortable, but you have to understand why things like this do resonate with lots of different types of people up and down the country. Then we've got my favourite, which is social graces. So this is more traditional, and it's about our love of order and control and respectability. But actually, when you scratch underneath it, it's about the appearance of respectability. Because in British culture, we're a really class-aware, class-conscious society. So you're always aware of those hidden rules that govern our behaviour, and sometimes lead to us being proper awkward, and can often lead to those moments of cringe. Because we're really driven by this, it seeps out into suburbia. So this really helps us understand why ITV dramas tend to pull in like 9 million, 10 million people, because we love watching middle-class people taking chunks out of each other at marble-topped kitchen-top surfaces as they realise that their partner has been unfaithful, that their neighbour was not, in fact, who they thought they were, that their position in the village parish is going to be under threat by the new person who's moved in down the road. Suburban respectability is about conforming, so sometimes it's about societal judgment. Don't know if any of you are watching Love Island at the moment. I love Ekin Su. I've got a lot of time for that woman. She understood the assignment, she's bringing all the drama, but she's getting a lot of heat, and that's because she's defying societal norms around what it is to be a woman today. Women aren't meant to go out there with an agenda and going out and chasing what they want. They're meant to be slightly playing into more kind of traditional feminine characteristics, and she's totally upending them and stimulating a lot of cultural debate. So this is the idea of the biggest cultural sin, which is being up yourself. So how many phrases do we have around that? Like, she's getting way too big for her boots. He needs to be taken down a peg or two. Oh my God, he's getting way too big for his boots. She's changed. It's because in Britain, we are so aware of our standing and staying in your lane that when people seem to be getting ahead of it and coming out of their class, we try to bring them back in. It's why whenever you go to the pub, you're going to be roasted by your friends. It's kind of like a national pastime and a national hobby. But equally, this one is also about our love of the countryside, about our rural way of life. It's Alan Titchmarsh, it's the National Trust, which is one of the biggest membership organisations in the whole of the UK. Next up, we've got dreaming big. So this is 55% of the nation agreeing with this one, just as a reminder. So it's just slightly more emergent. We're a nation of immeasurable talent, allowing people to seek out their ambitions and dreams. Britain has been evolving and flowing, just like the waters that surround our island. And no, that's not someone from ITV Creative who knocked that up for me. That's from one of our participants called Sonia in Bristol. And it really palpably has this energy of Britain being a place of innovators, of changing and disrupting. But when we tested this, it was really clear that British eccentricity and entrepreneurialism isn't landing. And I think at the heart of it is actually telling us about what's happening in society at the moment and the two different narratives that are rubbing up against each other. We've got one, which is British exceptionalism, and that is arrogant, it's bullish, it's swaggering. It's the old England football team, if you think about it, the Wayne Rooney kind of the world, versus the new Gareth Southgate era of being humble, of paying it back, of saying thank you, of translating and overcoming your obstacles, of releasing cathartically your emotions, of training the younger generation and bringing them up. British exceptionalism has got elitist overtones, and it's probably going to bite Boris Johnson at some point in his arse. This is about grassroots change. This is about people like the amazing figure that is Marcus Rashford, driving our communities forward to a better tomorrow. And then next up, we've got knowing your roots. So this is a really weird one, and I love it. It reconnects us both with rugged places as much as it reconnects us with rugged people. So it's about finding meaning in an increasingly meaningless world and being more mindful. So an example of this, so this is Fiona, she's in Scotland. So the tattoo that she's got on her left leg is the Forth Bridge in Scotland, which roots her to the sense of belonging where she grew up. And then on the right is a family tree with her daughter Isla. This, for Fiona, is communicating her sense of who she is in the wider world and the people and the place that have made her who she is. But equally, knowing your roots is also about mysticism and this increasing rise in spirituality. That even translated to people like Mark, who's 60 in Manchester, who's a proper burly chap. When you went into his garden, he's put gnomes in different areas because he believes that they can talk to each other. He backs into a forest. Mark goes to Glastonbury and he likes to touch the stones because he feels that he gets a lot of energy from them. So don't be fooled. This isn't just a Gen Z and millennial approach. This is something that a lot of people are finding helps more them in a world that can increasingly feel disconnected and overwhelming. It could also just be about the love of rewilding projects, and Brits love an animal, they love a vole, and they're really behind making sure that we use rewilding as a way to restore our beloved landscapes. It really also explains the popularity of shows like The Repair Shop, because it's about the graft and the craft and there being in a state of flow that comes from creating something, and local provenance and growing your own. And then finally, we've got everyday magic. This is a dog party. So this is Nicola. She's from Scotland as well. She threw her dogs a little party in the pandemic. They don't look that happy. I think it made her more happy than it did them. But this is all about joy and escapism and humour in a world that is increasingly feeling very much a place of doom and gloom. And it's actually essential respite and a coping mechanism. So don't palm this off as something that's just about fleeting feel-good. It's something that people are really needing to cope with the things that are coming their way in life. It's about sharing our feelings to combat the mental health epidemic. It's about finding therapy and cathartic healing through play and being more silly. And it's also about the sociological principle called collective effervescence. What's that? Well, it's when we all come together at large and we feel this mass rush, this kind of mass buzz. It's why events like the Olympics, the World Cup, the Jubilee are such binding forces still up and down the UK. So in a world where everyone's focused about brand purpose and it can feel like we're absorbing that all the time with headlines, sometimes it's enough for a brand just to be about this, to put a smile on people's faces and elevate the everyday. So that's it from me. Get in touch with me if you'd like to get the research in full. Happy to share it with you. It's a big old doc. It's definitely not bedtime reading. And I'd be happy to come and do a presentation with anyone if that would help. I'm also open to questions if anyone wants to ask anything. I'm not going to answer about Piers Morgan. That's the only caveat.
Thank you so much. Can you have a round of applause?